Noel Marin. I'm based here in Hilo, and I'm with Sustainable Energy Hawaii. I'm a board member. I'll just kick it around here. Peter, you want to go next?
Hi, Peter Sternlight. I also am a board member at Sustainable Energy Hawaii. Dave?
Dave Antone. I've been working with Peter and Noel on the hydrogen hubs concept here. We're part of the application with DOE, and we're looking to build a fully integrated geothermal to hydrogen facility on the Big Island. I'm located in Kona.
Thanks, Dave. John?
John Cross. I live in Hakulau. I'm an independent land and water consultant, and I have my focus on hydroelectric energy.
Hydro must be killing it these days.
Oh my goodness! You know, my hydro plant down in Tuttle went down in January because of lack of water. Now I have 6 feet of water in a 12-inch pipe, and it's shooting out of the top of the vent hole on the transducer pipe.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the nice benefits of this rain. Jerry
Chang, a member of the board of SEH. I'm from Hilo. I'm a former state representative. Just for your information, since Mike is on and will be a guest speaker, way back in 1988, when I first ran for office, I ran against 5 male Democrats. I was the only one supporting geothermal, and I won. So the press picked it up as like a sign that people in the Puna district supported geothermal. But I think the antis were the ones that don't vote, so maybe that's why I got in.
Thanks, Jerry. Mitch?
Yeah, Mitch Ewan. I'm the Hydrogen Systems Program Manager at the Hawaii Natural Energy Institute, located here on Oahu. But I have an office and a station over at Nelha. You can see a picture of my station over my shoulder there. And I work on hydrogen and hydrogen buses and trying to convert the Big Island transportation system over to zero emission hydrogen and battery. No, well, I'm good with batteries.
Well, fuel cell EVs have batteries too, so we're good.
They do.
Yeah. Stan is joining us. He's still. Oh, there you are. Hey, Stan, can you hear us? You're muted. Okay, well, wait for him to. Yeah, we're just doing quick intros.
I got you.
Stan, we're just doing quick intros. Do you want to do a quick introduction of yourself?
Oh, okay. I got my video up. I'm Stan Osterman. I've been on the board with SEH for about, almost a year now, I guess. And my background is I grew up here in Hawaii, graduated of the University of Hawaii with a fine arts degree. I have a master's in international relations from University of Oklahoma. Did 35 years in the Hawaii Air National Guard, about 18 in the Honolulu police officer, and started off washing dishes and doing janitor work when I was in high school. So I've got a pretty interesting background. When I finished the military, I worked for the state of Hawaii in a program called the Hawaii Center for Advanced Transportation Technologies. And in that job, I was using Air Force funds, R&D funds, research and development funds, to build hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicles for the Air Force to demonstrate their utility on the Air Force flight line and combat operations. So I did that for about 6 years and then retired from there and started just doing consulting for free. And so I'm actually a really terrible businessman because I'm not making any money. But I'm really enjoying working with the state of Hawaii to get renewable energy tracking.
Great. Well, thank you, Stan. So it's Doug and was it Joni?
Joni.
Yes. Yeah. Do you want to just do a quick intro?
Yeah. Retired chiropractor of 36 years. Lived here all my life. Got into a battle with Frank Fossey over Save Our Bays and Beaches and won against him wanting to downgrade the treatment to Kailua Bay. Kailua Oahu is where we're at.
And I'm Joni Kroll, and I'd say that we're just passionate about Hawaii's future, helping renewable energy. Initially, we were some early adopters of solar and electric vehicles and started a nonprofit called Equal Opportunity Solar, but are beginning to recognize solar's limitations and stopgap measures and want to see where the next thing is that we can direct our energies, whether that's in testimony or in nonprofit work or what we can do. So we came across you guys, spoke with Peter today, and want to get to know more about what you're doing and how we can accelerate it.
Thanks, Doug and Joni. Okay, Kala and Keith, thanks for joining as well. We were just doing quick intros here, but in the interest of time, we'll kick off. Keith is also a familiar face for SEH as well as Kaikala. And I will now just do a quick intro for Mike, and then Mike, I'll turn it over to you. So I guess I have the honor and the pleasure here of introducing you to our as our guest speaker today. Mike is Senior Director for PGV, Hawaii Affairs for PGV, which is Hawaii's sole geothermal energy plant. He's responsible for business development, public and private and government affairs, and has extensive experience with our operations over at PGV. So obviously this is going to be a discussion around geothermal, about PGV, and I'm sure that our participants today have some questions as well. So with that, Mike, I'll give you time here to just share the latest and greatest, what's going on with you, what's going on with ORMAT, with PGV, and we'll kick it off.
Thank you, Noel. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for this opportunity to participate Pau Hana Fridays. It's always great to give folks updates of what's going on. Yeah, so I am Mike, for those who haven't met me. Pleased to meet you folks. And I've been at Puna Geothermal for some years now. And I am in business development, formerly in operations. And a lot of exciting things going on, actually. For those who, we had that eruption, right, in 2018. So we shut the plant down. The lava went around us. It did cover a couple wells, which we recovered a few of them. But we've been drilling since then because we've determined that it's better to drill new wells rather than try to recover the ones that were damaged. And so we're close to 30 megawatts, and we're getting ready for an outage here this coming month. It's a scheduled outage just to perform maintenance. We do this annually. It'll be for about at least a week or so. But we anticipate once we return back to service that we'll be above 30 megawatts in April. By mid-April timeframe is our target. Our contract with Helco, of course, is for 38 megawatts. Prior to the eruption in 2018, we were delivering actually in excess of 40 megawatts. And Hawaiian Electric Helco folks were taking it because it was the most cost-effective energy available. And in 2017, we represented about 31% of all the energy on the Helco grid. And then, of course, Hawaiian Electric, or Helco, was about close to 60% renewable. Yeah? And then our target is 100% by 2045. Last year, our contribution was about 20% of the grid. So our target is to return back to 38 megawatts by year end, and we're on track. We've got 2 more new wells to drill. We've completed 2 of them, and we're in the process of connecting it to the plant. We'll perform, and that's part of the outage. Yeah, you need to have downtime to perform work that you can't do when the plant's in operation. So connecting the new wells will be part of that. Get back up in April. So operational wise, that's what's going on. Things are looking pretty good. On the business development side, we have been in negotiations with Hawaiian Electric. And I say Hawaiian Electric, but for those of us who've been on Hawaii Island for a long time, it's Helco, right? So they're one and the same. But the PUC approved, conditionally approved, an amended and restated power purchase agreement last year in March 2022, and it was for a repower project to take us to 46 megawatts. The four key elements of the amended and restated power purchase agreement was one, we want to replace the old 12 generating units that we have today that's generating 38 megawatts with 3 newer, more efficient units that will be capable and able to produce 46 megawatts, but utilizing the same geothermal resource. The second key element is that all pricing will be delinked from oil. Today, the 38 megawatts is partially with oil and partially fixed. So there are some benefits that ratepayers are seeing, but we still have up to 25 megawatts that's connected to oil. So when oil prices go up, then then that cost goes up for Halco and ratepayers also. But once we get the new contract and the new equipment going, it'll be all fixed pricing, and the conditions that the PUC imposed on us was to perform an environmental assessment. And so PGV has decided to perform an environmental impact statement. And the Hawaii County will be the accepting authority. And this was, we went back and forth with the PUC. And ultimately it was the PUC that mandated that we do the environmental assessment. We went through all the different agencies. The DLNR stated that an environmental assessment wasn't required. The Department of Health, their position was that environmental assessment wasn't required. And we were of the same position, PGV, through our council. But because the PUC mandated that we perform the environmental review, what they did actually was they suspended the docket in lieu of performing the environmental review. So we got to work with the state energy office, with the county. We spoke with DLNR, spoke with DOH, and said, look, we want to get this docket out of suspension. And the only way to do it was for us to do the environmental review. So Mayor Roth, Department of Health, worked with us and was willing to be the accepting authority, right? The big deal behind this is, if you're familiar with Chapter 343, you have to have a trigger and you have to have an action. You need both in order to have to fulfill the environmental review part. So in our case, the trigger, which is typically the use of state lands or the use of state funds. In our case, we're on private land, so our position was that didn't fit for us. But because the state claims ownership to the geothermal resource, the PUC took the position that the resource is state land, right? So we didn't fight it. We could have, but then it would have prolonged another legal battle for years and years and years. We said, look, let's just go do the environmental review. And so PGV and our parent company Ormat said, let's do it. So that's why we worked with all the different agencies to let them know what we thought the best course of action going forward to get this docket out of suspension. And that's where we're at today, is we're doing the EIS. The county will be the accepting authority. We've already completed a scoping meeting last year in August. We're close to completing the draft EIS, which will be submitted to the environmental bulletin, which is under the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. Once that draft is posted, there's a 45-day comment period. So we're thinking March, most likely April, that the draft will be posted. So you go 45 days from there, that takes us out to ending of April or probably May before our consultants can review all of the comments from the draft EIS. And then from that period, we probably have maybe 2 weeks and the EIS will be completed. So the PUC's order in removing the suspension was for us to do this environmental review, and their requirement is we cannot start any construction at PGV until we're done with the environmental review. Now, in parallel, we've been working with Hawaiian Electric, Telco, because we've had some disagreements, and because of the period from the time we submitted, or from the time Hawaiian Electric submitted the original PPA in December of 2019 until today, there's been a whole host of things that have impacted supply chains, and inflation, etc. And so, and it's not, if you've been following the PUC, a lot of developers have actually pulled out. They've had approved PPAs, but said they could not meet the requirements because of the increase in costs. So we are discussing those aspects, and we're discussing commercial operation date to complete the project with Hawaiian Electric. We hope will soon be come to an agreement. So that'll take an additional 6 months. We're asking for an amendment to the conditionally approved ARPPA. It'll take 6 months, so I think we're thinking it'll be in parallel that we complete the EIS, complete the amendment, and then we'll be good to go. So that's what we're crossing our fingers for on the business development side. On a upside note, and maybe going back to historical stuff Jerry was sharing back in 1988. So we started commercial operation in 1993. So this year is the 30th anniversary of geothermal in Hawaii, right? Commercial operations. So we're going to wait until the end of the legislative session, and we're going to put on a big old celebration. I'll make sure we invite, the SEH folks out there and all the folks that have been helping us out over the years to come celebrate with us. It's going to be a nice event. We plan to have a nice event. 30 years, long time. So that's kind of like generally what's going on. We are participating in the with the state on the hydrogen hub. So we've been working on that. And from our perspective, we would be a provider of energy. I mean, that's what we do. ORMAT, PGV, our main focus, our primary expertise is delivering geothermal kilowatts, right? So, and getting back to the EIS, we're actually doing it in 2 phases. So I mentioned that the repower project will take us to 46 megawatts. That will be the first phase. We're doing a phase 2 that'll take us to 60 megawatts. And the reason why we're doing this EIS in the 2 phases, 46 first and 60, is that of course we've got the proposal before the PUC for 46 megawatts, but with the county and with DLNR, we have permits that would allow us to go up to 60 megawatts. So for us, it just makes sense. We're going to do this environmental review. Why not do it to the extent that we have, partial approvals? Now, once we're done with the EIS, and once we're there and we're at 46 megawatts, then what would be needed would be just amendments to the air permit and amendments to the reinjection permit. Both of them are state permits. So there's going to be other permits, but we're halfway there. I mean, the 2 probably most challenging parts is going through the board, land board at DLNR, which we've done that. We can go to 60 megawatts, and then going through the county up to 60 megawatts. So that's the background behind why we're doing the EIS in 2 phases.
That's great, Mike. I'm pretty sure there are a number of questions that have come up. I see Stan's raised his hand already.
Sure.
Stan, you want to
go? Sure. Mike, I don't want to put you on the hot seat, but working for ORMAT's a big company. They're on the mainland. They do a lot of geothermal work. How do they compare Hawaii with other states for regulatory oversight and timing and stuff to get your projects done? Did they see Hawaii a really great place to do this stuff, or maybe not so good?
Well, if you were to categorize the great places on the top and the worst places on the bottom, we're below the bottom. it's a tough place to do work here for TFM. Super tough. I can share an example.
Okay, don't hold back now, Mike.
No. Some years ago, we were interested in exploring outside of the East Rift Zone on Kilauea in Puna. So we actually went to Maui. We engaged with Maui County, and we were looking to see if we could find something on Haleakala on the Southwest Rift, up there at Ulupalakua. We got to the point where we actually promulgated some county rules because the Maui County didn't have any rules like we have at Hawaii County, the GRP rules. So we worked with them, and we pretty much used the Hawaii County as the template. So we got those rules in place, and then we started doing environmental review, and then it just drug on, and it took quite a bit of effort and resources on our side. In the meantime, we're getting a lot of progress in the mainland, in California, in Nevada. So ORMAD decision maker said, you know what, we need to focus more on places where we're making more progress. And that's what we did. So we left Maui. And even on the Hawaii Island, we did do some preliminary work on the west side. Not much. But again, I know Don Thomas tried to do some non-invasive surveys on the west side, and people wanted to sue him, and so he didn't have money to push back or anything. So he stopped his initiative to do those surveys. So that's the kind of business activities or opposition and whatnot that lead our decision folks to say, you know what, we have a lot more success elsewhere. That's why it's critical that we're lucky, we're fortunate we have the 60 megawatt piece from the county and the DLNR. Because we even considered doing the EIS for 100 megawatts, but we said, oh, I don't know about that, because then probably get a couple more years added on to the review process. I hope I answered your questions there.
Thanks, Mike. Peter, you had
Yes, you did, Mike. We appreciate that.
Yeah, very interesting, Mike. So the question that I have is, doing this in two phases, you've got that extra 16 megawatt block. Is
14.
that 14? Sorry,
yeah.
Is that power committed to HELCO, or is that power that you can do other things with, so to speak?
Right. Good question. Maybe to just cover all 60. The 46 currently would be only committed for HELCO. Right. The amended and restated power purchase agreement is detailed that we would only be able to deliver that energy to them. We talked about being able to hopefully deliver it to a third party, because we're going to have a 46 megawatt facility, but they're not going to want us to be at 46 megawatts 24/7. They're going to want us to be able to do load following, be able to go up and down as the demand of the grid, right, requires. So what we've agreed to be able to do is deliver at least 20 megawatts and then up to 46 megawatts. And then getting to your specific questions, the 14 megawatts that would be under a 60 megawatt permit is not committed to anyone at this point. So it's available. I know the state energy office folks are interested. There's been other private developers that have posed interest, not just, it's been for hydrogen, it's been for crypto mining. So there's lots of interest, but it's available to whoever we can work out a deal with, Peter.
Crypto mining.
Yeah, crypto mining.
It makes perfect sense.
Yep. Yep.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Stan?
Yeah, I don't want to hog the thing, but no, thanks, Mike. When you start looking at geothermal for Hawaii, and you have to go through these processes. I know some of them are really important, like environmental impact statements and things from here are pretty critical. But it just seems like Hawaii, at least a lot of the people trying to solve the problem, don't understand that we don't have a firm power in solar and wind, and there's a lot of pushback on wind by itself. So the state's looking primarily at solar. Is it realistic to try and consider geothermal to be that firm power across the state? Because I know Ormat does deep wells too for geothermal on the mainland, and you don't have to be on a volcanic hotspot to get geothermal. You can actually do it pretty much anywhere. In fact, I sent a good friend of mine. I think you've seen him on this forum. It's Dan Goen. One of the clients in his company is AES.
Okay.
And so I said, hey, Dan, why don't you tell AES when they shut down the coal plant on Oahu, see if they would be interested in putting in a geothermal plant in that spot, because the footprint's small enough and everything else. See if they would do it. And I don't think they even wanted to consider it. But how's Hawaii going to get to 100% clean without things like geothermal? Because solar's just not going to get us all the way there. And then on the other piece too, a second question would be, if you've got this surplus energy, I've worked with Hawaii Gas before to try and see if they would do hydrogen, and they actually have a solar array that has curtailed power, and they told me they couldn't do hydrogen because in their contract, Hawaiian Electric won't let them use that power to make hydrogen. So I've got two questions to you there. One is, how do we get the rest of the state to understand that if we really want to go clean, we're going to have to do more than just solar and batteries? And also, how do we get past this debacle with trying to get solar or geothermal around the island, around the state?
Right. Yeah. A couple questions you pose. I think the one about, is it realistic that geothermal can be the state's answer to firm energy? There is a potential, but the state really needs, or others need to really do some work to prove up potential resources elsewhere on Hawaii Island and maybe on Oahu and Maui, right? So if you talk to folks like Don Thomas and Nicole Lautze, they believe that there is potential on other islands and other areas on Hawaii Island, and then even if it's only Hawaii Island, there is potential for many more megawatts. It's just that no one's gone out of the East Rift Zone to really prove up that the resource elsewhere. But let's say we could prove up a resource on Mauna Loa or Hualalai, right? So then the question becomes, well, if we do get energy there, how do we get it to Oahu or Maui? And in my mind, one way is the undersea cable, which was contemplated back in the 90s. And my understanding is that Hawaiian Electric actually ran some cable tests between Hawaii Island and Maui just to prove that they could run the cable. Right? And I know some years ago, I was on a trip with then Mayor Billy Kinoy and Jay Ignacio from Helco. We went to the Philippines, and they have undersea cables that transport geothermal energy from islands to the main, to the main city. And so it's doable, right? Now, there's costs associated with doing that. I think another opportunity in getting geothermal energy off Hawaii Island, if Hawaii Island is the only place that has it, is maybe hydrogen, in the form of a fuel. So can AES convert their equipment to run off of hydrogen? I don't know. I know that there are LM2500s, gas turbines that and larger that do run off of hydrogen. There was a time some years ago that I was talking with the Helco folks to consider maybe doing a pilot test to use hydrogen as a fuel for their gas turbines. So those are things, those are options and perhaps opportunities to really evaluate further. But I mean, when you say, is it realistic? I think it can be done. It's just we got to prove up where the resources are.
Yeah. How about the using curtailed power? Is that
So
still
for the
kind of
46,
a non-starter?
For the 46 megawatts, like I was mentioning, between 20 and 46, how cool? So we get paid capacity payments, right? And so their position is, look, you're getting paid for it, so we don't want it to be used for any other reason except to be ready and available for when we ask for it. Okay. So having said that, we agreed to it to move the discussions on to get the ARPPA. But in my mind, and I haven't spoke with any Hawaiian Electric folks, and so this is just speculation on my part between us here on this call, is that I don't see why at some future time when we get to 46 megawatts that I think we can approach Hawaiian Electric and start a dialogue to see if somehow we can figure out something to utilize the energy when we're not at 46, right? So it would have to be a team effort. Somehow, if they can benefit, we would benefit by using the power instead of being curtailed. And I think that discussion, though, we got to get to 46 megawatts first and stay there for a little bit, prove it, and they're happy with our performance. Then we can approach and talk. But this is just all speculation between us, because for now the contract doesn't allow any of the 46 megawatts that may be curtailed to be used other than by help.
Mitch.
Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mitch.
Mitch, you're on mute.
I was on
You're on
mute.
mute.
So one of my new tasks is to do a feasibility study for hydrogen for the state. It's a feasibility study. It's not a plan. And so I'm running numbers. Rick wanted me to look at the macro numbers, like what's the maximums here. So these are unvetted, but I just worked these out today.
Okay.
So if we assume that for transportation only, if we wanted to convert the whole state over to hydrogen, I'm not saying there's no mix between battery electric and hydrogen cars. It's just 100% hydrogen, just for an example. So how much hydrogen will we need to do that? Well, basically, it's 480 per annum. It would be 485,692 tons, which works out to 1,328 tons per day we'd have to generate just for our road transportation. That's a lot of hydrogen. If we just wanted to do, I got the numbers for the bus, for the city and county of Honolulu, all their vehicles, we need 10,592 tons per year, and that works out to about 29 to 30 tons per day, which is doable. That's certainly doable. But that just gives you an idea of the magnitude we're talking about for these kinds of projects. And in my opinion, the only reasonable way we can do it is with geothermal. And, in my opinion, we need to have a drilling program on each island running in parallel, and 2 to 3 exploratory wells per island. And it's a two for one, because when we drill it, we're going to find water. So we'll find potable water.
Right.
And that's the way to do it and not screw around. We're running out of time to get this done, and to do it serially, one well at a time. We'll never get there before the end of the century. So anyway, those are just some thoughts.
So Mitch, what you're talking about, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to ask. So Mitch, you say 1,300 tons per day would be able to address transportation. That's statewide. Does that include the 29 tons for the bus on Oahu?
Yes. Yeah,
So
that would be all.
1,300 tons per day. What does that equate to in megawatts?
I can tell you that. It's I've got that here. Hang on. That would be 26.7 terawatt hours per year.
26.
Can you say that again?
26.7 terawatt hours per year to generate that much hydrogen.
Okay.
And on another spreadsheet I worked out, which I don't have to hand like I do here, I have worked out how much geothermal that would take. So basically it's takes 55 kilowatt hours to make a kilogram of hydrogen. So that's the basic number. Can be a little bit more, can be a little bit less, but a really good rule of thumb is 55 kilowatt hours. So the mathematics is relatively easy. It's just the numbers are so big.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Peter?
I'll take the flag down
now. I'll take mine down too. So along that line, there is a report coming that is going to be very similar to what you're doing relative to hydrogen, but it's going to look at the entire electrical consumption for the state of Hawaii. And I've mentioned this before, I won't dive into it really deeply, but this is the project that we're working on with the Geological Survey of Finland. And we're going to be publishing the amount of power that it's going to take to eliminate the use of fossil fuels altogether. And it is as we now, from what you're mentioning, a staggering volume. And as you say, we don't really have a lot of time. One thing I wanted to mention about taking hydrogen and say sending it to Oahu to be used in gas turbines is that taking electricity to make hydrogen to power a gas turbine is extraordinarily inefficient. You lose so much of the energy potential in heat that a wiser direction to go, if you're not looking at CapEx, is fuel cell to power the generation. But for instance, there's a project going on in LA right now where they're actually looking at building a solar farm, a pipeline from the desert into Los Angeles to be able to repurpose a fossil fuel powered power plant that's in the South Bay Area. And in looking into that a little bit deeper, that type of use is only going to be used to offset peak demand. It's not, basically it'll be sitting there idle and it'll be used to supply power when that peak demand arises. So it'll be momentary supplies. But the idea of hydrogen being able to provide power to other islands, to me, really only makes sense within context of transportation. Regenerating electricity seems to be transport electrons. Doesn't really make sense to me. Does it make sense to anyone else? I mean, Stan, Mitch, do you guys have any thoughts about that?
I'm kind of in your camp, Peter.
Okay.
I mean, I agree.
Mitch,
plus we're going to be looking at making fuels for aircraft, for aviation. Some of them will be hydrogen based or ammonia based, and some will be drop-in fuels made from hydrogen and carbon dioxide to go into aircraft for aviation for a while. And then possibly large container ships and stuff. They've already gotten rid of bunker fuel. They're using diesel too for cargo ships now. And they're looking at ammonia to run those ships. So Hawaii's going to have to produce, not just for our transportation, and probably not just on the Big Island, but that's why I told AES I thought they should look at making a coal-fired power plant into a geothermal plant in place, because it's right in Campbell Industrial Park. So you wouldn't be transporting hydrogen to make liquid fuels. You'd use it right there and put it right in the aviation side or the transportation side.
Well,
So I agree
Stan,
with you.
another use for electrical power beyond producing the hydrogen is going to be for direct air capture of the CO2 to be able to produce your drop-in fuels. So the power demand to replace liquid transportation fuels is going to far exceed just what's needed for hydrogen, because it does make sense to create these power to X fuels, if you will, for that particular term, using carbon dioxide. But we don't have the CO2 supply, as a readily available thing, and that's going to require additional power as well. So, I mean, yes, this transition challenge is huge, and geothermal is realistically the only feasible route to produce that volume of power within a reasonable amount of time. And of course, legislation is as Mike was describing, a huge blockade. And so the regulatory changes that we need to make are pretty formidable as well, but they got to be done.
Mitch, why don't you go?
Well, okay, you had your hand up. I was going to let you go. I didn't want to
I'll comment after you.
Okay, so there's a couple of options I see. So first of all, don't commit me to the loony bin, but there is, I have been working on an airship project for many, many years now. And we're developing an airship that's 1,000 feet long, 200 feet in diameter. But the key point is that it can travel at 170 miles per hour, and it has a payload of 150 tons. So one airship could make 2, possibly 3 trips a day if we were saying Big Island was the only source of hydrogen. And we could supply Oahu and some of the other islands. So it's point to point. You don't need an airport. Blah blah blah. So you can check it out at hydrogenclipper.com. Secondly, just following on what I said, if we drill geothermal wells on each island, then we don't have to worry about inter-island transport. And what we really need to do is set up pipeline systems on each island. So from the resource, put in a pipeline grid on each island so we can deliver the hydrogen that way around and distribute it around the island. So those would be my 2 solutions to this. But it all starts getting a drilling program going. I would say about 50 to 100 million, more like $100 million. And I don't know if this is possible, but the other part of my thought is to get a permit, a universal permit that covers all islands. So we only have to do it once. And so you get a permit that allows drilling, exploration on each island simultaneously. We don't have to do it individually. That's it. Those are my higher level comments.
So I have a question for Mike, but also just a general comment. So, I firmly believe that, hydrogen is going to be playing a very critical role in decarbonization of our, economy globally. I think it's also important to understand that, there's a time for everything, right? Like, it's going to take a while for us to get the generation capacity that is required for us to be able to have this clean energy for green hydrogen. In the meantime, we have this challenge in front of us, which is to decarbonize as much as we need to and can, and also reduce the cost of electricity for our people. So, the work, Mike, that we're doing in terms of increasing generation capacity, et cetera, ultimately, it's very good to hear again that the agreement is going to be divorced from oil. That's going to translate into economic benefits for the people, right? So I think, like in the near term, it's going to be very, very important for us to also keep our line of sight to whatever needs to happen, and that could include geothermal, hydro, solar, and so on and so forth, so that we can actually reduce the cost of energy for Hawaii Island and Hawaii in general. and do so in a way that is low carbon, no carbon. At the same time, we need to continue to work towards these solutions, right? So we have a hydrogen economy that addresses all these different use cases that are really difficult to electrify. You've got aviation, you've got marine, you've got, fertilizer production, and so on and so forth. The list is really long. So I'm going to take us back to today, and it relating to what you mentioned earlier, which is if you produce more. So you have this agreement with HECO, which is 20 all the way up to 46, and during some of that time frame, there could be curtailment. It sounds like, right? Because they don't want to have you sell it to somebody, but they also want it to be there on standby, and they can't use it 24/7. It looks like. So, are there strategies that either I'm assuming the utility would do this, but what about PGV in terms of like capturing and storing that energy, either chemical storage or hydrogen / fuel cell, so that you can deliver it whenever it's needed, right? So is that part of the strategy, or does it truly get curtailed? And maybe a follow-up question is, do we actually curtail today? Do we actually dump this energy today?
Yeah. So I'd say, well, we don't have any strategy in the works to utilize the curtailed energy when we're not at 46. We'll call it curtailed for now. So, but I mean, that's an interesting thought, and I'm certain that's something that could be brought up to Hawaiian Electric to help the folks. But it's something we'd have to touch base with them on.
Okay, but today, are we curtailing? Are we like dumping energy because the utility can't use the energy?
Let me get back to you on that one. So, as an example, in 2017, our contract for 38 megawatts throughout the entire year, we averaged like 37.6 megawatts for the entire year. So essentially, there was very minimal curtailment of the 38. And with our 38 megawatts, Halco is only required to take 30. But because the 8 megawatt is so advantageous and beneficial to ratepayers, because it's the lowest rates, they'll take it. So we would anticipate something similar happening with the 46, because the energy rates are going to be 7 cents a kilowatt hour until we reach a total of 227 megawatt hours. Then it'll be reduced to 4 cents a kilowatt hour. So for sure, I mean, that's what we anticipate anyway. But today, no, we haven't been curtailed.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that.
And we haven't been at 38 either. So, we all hear, right? Oh, conserve energy, right? Conserve energy. And so we've been trying to help out by giving them as much as we have, because they're from time to time they've been short on supply for various reasons.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for clarifying that, because there was this, this notion and misconception that we are today, in some instances, curtailing the energy, and I couldn't see that.
No, it's not.
Yeah. Okay,
we can't be curtailing what Halco's saying. Please cut back during peak hours.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Thank you. Any other questions from anyone?
Yeah, I have a quick question, Mike. What's the nearest house now? The eruption took out all those communities around the geothermal plant. So, so the noise from the drilling and all that, is that pretty well? Did Madame Pele kind of remove that issue?
Well, we still get noise complaints. We still get complaints about lights in the facility. So one of the things that happened is with the lava surrounding us, it took out the trees and such, right? So the line of sight is a little different, and that's what people say when they complain about noise. But is it noisier? I don't think so. The nearest home is to the east of us, but they're on the ridge, on the rift zone like we are, and they're still there because they're next to us. But all the homes around Lanipuna and the lower portions of Leilani, they're not there anymore.
So one other quick question is, and I think we talked about it a long time ago. What about switching to electric drill rig, so you're not kind of ramping up this diesel engine and making all this noise? And plus, you can produce your own electricity, so you don't have to buy all the diesel fuel.
So we are using an electric rig.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Our motor-driven rig was covered by the lava, so we replaced it with an electric rig. But we still have the auxiliary equipment, the support equipment that are run by big motors. But we use our acoustical engineer, and we put noise blankets, and we position the equipment so that the noise is directed to the plant and not out to the community. Same thing with the lighting, right? We point the lighting so that it's to the plant and not out to the community. For the community's sake, and then there's some birds that fly around the Newell shearwater. I haven't seen any, but the scientists say that they are around. So.
There is, when I was in Silicon Valley, we'd have this in the offices. They have this noise cancellation technology. It's active noise. They essentially just feed out the inverse of the sound waves, right, as a way to cancel out or reduce the sound. So is that available for facilities like this, like industrial scale?
It's available. We're not using it, but we've actually considered it. We have components that actually are they're like they have a space between them, so the noise goes through one side of the space and it gets stuck in there and just kind of stays in there. It goes up though. So it's similar. If you've ever been to Las Vegas, where they have the roller coaster, when you walk by, it's very quiet because they have this noise mitigation components there, and that's how we found out about it. Someone from PGV was in Las Vegas, and then we found out about it, so we're using it at PGV.
That's cool.
Yeah, they're called dampeners, both for vibration and acoustic. Yeah.
Okay, that's the one.
Mike, I have a question about public. I'm sorry, Jerry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Noel.
Yeah, just a quick question about public sentiment. So, I know that you periodically have the community forums out there, or the opportunity to engage with the community. So, has it changed? Is it evolving, or do you still see, a small set of individuals who are just really anti-geothermal?
So it's changed a little bit, in my opinion. We're starting to get a few folks that seem to have migrated from Mauna Kea to us. But it's more of the folks that, they do the live streaming and the Instagram and that sort of thing. Younger folks in their 30s, I would say. But the rest of them have been mostly like Leilani residents and Puna residents that have been there a long time. And a lot of them are there to really wanting to find out what's going on. So from that aspect, maybe it's changed a little bit, but and then of course we have some that really are hardcore opposed to geothermal, even to the point where they're saying that we caused the eruption and that type of claims. But then there's some old folks, not old, but long time folks that were opposed to us. In fact, one of the gentlemen that probably opposed us since the 90s, over 30 years, I saw him at the Pahoa gas station, and I asked him, "Hey, how you doing?" His name is Bob Patrici. He's a good guy, a personal guy. I mean, he's been fighting us for years and years. He said he's doing well. He's concentrating on just farming on his land in Pohoiki. I said, "Yeah, I haven't seen you at any of our PGV community meetings." He says, "Yeah, Mike, I gave up. I give up on that. I've been fighting you guys for years and years and years, and I should have been surfing all this time." So I'm like, "Yeah, go tell your other friends start surfing." I thought it was interesting.
Well, Mike, I'd like to get a contract going with you if you can tell me that you guys start volcanoes with your activity, I think the Department of Defense has a big contract waiting for you.
Yeah, we're going to Oahu to start a volcano there. We'll go to all the islands.
Way back when, the environmentalists were the ones that were totally against geothermal, and that
Right.
was completely opposite of what you're trying to do. But I just couldn't understand it. But now the opposition is somewhat like the Hawaiian movement. That
A
part of
small
that,
amount, a small amount. Yeah, just a couple folks so far. I mean, so far. You can look at them at our website. You can see the guys.
So the other question is, when you upgrade to increase your megawatts, what will happen with the old equipment?
We'll decommission. We want to remove them and
decommission?
get them out. Yeah, decommission.
Can I use that elsewhere?
You probably could, but it'd probably be too costly to maintain and operate them, man. Unless you know someone who's interested.
Maybe
we could give
save
it
it for
away.
Maui.
Maui. Okay.
Keith, you have your hand up?
Sure. Well, in light of our upcoming 30-year celebration, I'm kind of wondering, it's like some of your neighbors that are, so vocal. I mean, it kind of sounds like somebody who buys a house near an airport and complains that they hear jets and see lights, Are these, these neighbors been around 30 years?
No, a lot of them are newer. Some have been around for long. Yeah, a lot of them have lived there for 30 years, but I haven't seen them complain, except for maybe the past 10 years or so. They've only recently wanting to participate.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Dan.
So
we're getting close. We're getting close to the end, but as part of what I do with Renew Rebuild Hawaii, I help with their forums as a moderator. And before I do that, when we have guests, I always interview them. And because I've seen Mililani Trask on, with you folks at SEH and other forums, I spent about over an hour talking to her. And if, I've lived here all my life, so, you look at her 30, 40 years ago, and she was about as anti-geothermal as you can get. And today, she's about as pro-geothermal as you're going to get. And there's a sea change. And I think with folks like Mililani Trask and Richard Ha and some other folks explaining, this source of energy is here for us to use. And Madam Pele is saying, use it, not you're being rude to Madam Pele. So, and Des, Uncle Des, he's the same thing. I think there's a pretty radical change that's in favor of geothermal, and for good reason. But it doesn't mean we ignore any environmental issues and things. We have to take those into account. But it's going to give the people in Hawaii more reasonable power in the long run. It's a lot of investment up front for the infrastructure, but like Richard Haas says, that heat source is going to be around for another 1,000,000 years, and we won't be around for another 1,000,000 years.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing.
Yep.
Great. Peter, I know you just raised your hand. We're a few minutes over now, but we'll take you, and then Doug. Curious as to whether or not you have any questions. Want to give you the opportunity as well. So let us know. Peter, you're muted.
I'm good. Doug's good.
Okay. Peter.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of reiterate what Stan was just saying. In that it really is a blessing, and there's a choice of how to look at what this resource is, and respectfully being respectful of not just the geothermal, but all of the resources that are part of what this island is, and the cultural and the traditional, history that the people have, will go a long way towards making this something that can provide us resiliency, self-sufficiency, which is something we are going to need within the next 20 years. The global economy will not be operating in 20 years the way it is today. Subject for another time, but as Mitch mentioned earlier, time is, we are short on time. We got to move.
Well, I'm pretty sure we'll find our way out of this one way or the other. But I really thank all of you for your time today. And Mike, this is incredibly helpful. So thanks very much for helping us understand where things are at, and also a lot of this interesting possibilities, right, beyond 46. So looking forward to that. I did put a little link in the chat there if you have like a few moments to listen to that. It's not just about the technology, the drilling technology they're talking about, but more about the the background, right? The why it's needed, the amount of energy that's required by the globe, and all that stuff. It's very fascinating listening. So if you get a chance, take a look at that. With that, I think we can conclude. We're 7 minutes over. Really appreciate everybody for spending time here. And until next time, aloha.
Aloha.
Thanks, Aloha. Take care, you guys.